Welcome to the granddaddy of them all in the sport of Formula One. We are going to Monaco this week. This is the most spectacular race on the Formula One calendar, minus the actual race.
Yeah.
It's the atmosphere, it's the ambiance, it's the story, it's the legacy, it's all of that. We're going to get into it on this preview. We're Turn One. We're your host, Thomas.
And Jeremiah.
All right, so how we like to do these is we'll talk to you a little bit about the previous Grand Prix, how it ended. We'll go into the track layout, and then we will go into some predictions towards the end of this. But Jeremiah, kick us off. How did the 2023 Monaco Grand Prix go?
Well, it's like Thomas said, it's the most exciting qualifying of the year. Not so much the race. But last year surprised us. We got a lot of action in the race. We saw Carlos Sainz trying to make moves around Ocon, slamming the back of him. The rain kicked up halfway through the race, and then you had people trying to decide if they're going to move to the inters like Mercedes or if they're going to stay on the slicks and risk it. Some people decided to risk it, went flying off the track, and Carlos Sainz. You had all kinds of action.
Right?
The Monaco hairpin. Huh?
Didn't Carlos go off twice?
Yeah. Well, I think 3 times, actually. But regardless, the Monaco hairpin is very famous in the opening sections of the race because everybody kind of dogpiles down in there. If you're one of the first ones in, you can kind of get in and out. But if you're towards the back of the grid, you're pretty much going 20, 15 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour for a good chunk of your race, just trying to wait till everybody feeds through that hairpin. That's not the case if you're Lance Stroll, where you're just going to try and dive bomb the outside and get a whole bunch of damage off the bat. Lance Stroll ends up having to retire, too much damage to the car. Checo Perez started way back and was trying to make his way through the grid, so you saw plenty of battles for him, plenty of good overtakes, up until he slaps the back of, I want to say it was Magnussen. I could be wrong. I think it was Magnussen. Anyway, damaging his wing. Then he's going to have to replace it in the pits. But there's a whole lot of that. This track is super congested. This is a track that people used to race on in F1 when the cars were tiny, and so you could go side by side through a good part of this track. Nowadays, that's not the case. You have very select places that you can even do an overtake successfully, and that's not to say that you are going to get it done. There's still a great chance that you're going to get some kind of contact, or maybe you tap a wall because it's too close to quarters, and you're going to damage your whole race. Now, that's why qualifying is so important on this track, because whoever qualifies in first can sneak away up in first. And that was the case for Max Verstappen last year, as he had an amazing qualifying session, got the first spot, and Fernando Alonso in that second spot. Basically, it was the year of the Red Bulls that year through and through. So as Max Verstappen took off into the sunset, Fernando Alonso had wide open room. So it was kind of like he was also in first. So he didn't really have any kind of battles or anything. That's why you're going to see Max and Fernando come in 1 and 2. The person that sneaks into third is one that's actually going to shock you. I believe it was Esteban Ocon, which was wild because, one, he started 4th, and that's fine. Alpine had a day. But the battles that Ocon was going through that entire race between Carlos Sainz trying to get around him and just with the rain coming in and having to switch off the tires, he still manages to keep his composure and pulls into third, rounding out the bottom of the podium. I thought that was honestly an exciting race for Monaco.
Anytime there's rain, I mean, at any track, there's chaos, but in Monaco specifically, because the track is so narrow and there's so little room for error, and usually on a regular race circuit, the rain only comes into effect, when you're really trying to like battle somebody and like dogfight them and you're braking late into a turning, you're doing moves that are dangerous regardless, and the rain adds to that. In Monaco, it's dangerous just even if you're not trying to pass somebody. Like, you could be going for a regular stop and slide into a wall, slide into a car, trying to go around the hairpin. And so as the raindrops started to fall at the end of that, you saw just chaos break out. And I think there's always, every year that we've watched Monaco, there's some level of pit chaos disaster in Monaco, whether it's a team forgetting tires, whether it's a team trying to double stack and not get it right. Was it a few years ago when Charles Leclerc was like told not to box or to box, and then as he's coming up into the pit lane, they're like, box, 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 and he's yelling and screaming in his radio at him. Every year there's some kind of chaos and confusion about Monaco's pit that just takes these guys out. The last note I have for you, though, You saw who finished second last year, right?
Yeah.
Fernando Alonso. This was kind of Aston Martin's downturn after this, because Fernando had been on a roll of third, fourth, third, second going into Monaco. He then proceeds to go 7, 2, 5, 7, 9, 5. And
After
so
Monaco.
still after Monaco. And so this was kind of because remember, this was about the time when a lot of teams started to bring upgrades. Mercedes, Ferrari brought floor upgrades. Remember, there was a whole conspiracy about the Red Bull car getting lifted out of the track and
Oh
everybody
yeah.
stealing their floor design. So, yeah, it was an interesting race for sure. Before we move on, do you have any other notes on last year's race?
Last year's race, no, but I do want to add Nick Vries was in the car last year, and this year it's Monaco favorite Daniel Ricciardo.
That it is indeed. Okay, so usually in this part of the preview, we look at the track, and we will, but I want to go back in time and look at what makes Monaco special. Because again, the race is fine. There's not, I mean, even in a chaotic race, there's not a lot of overtakes compared to the other races on the schedule. There, like Jeremiah mentioned a couple times, qualifying really is the race usually, at least for the top three. Because last year the top three didn't change, I think, throughout the entire race. Right?
Well,
Or am I wrong on that?
Albon started
That's
Ocon
right.
started fourth and finished third, but for the most part, yeah, you had Ocon staying up there, Charles Leclerc staying up there, Sainz staying up there, and then it started to mix up after that.
So what makes this track special is Monaco is the epitome, the hub of wealth and opulence, and everything is perfect all the time. And Formula One is a very high end, expensive sport. It's the most prestigious drivers in the world, the biggest name brands and companies sponsoring cars. And so you have that aspect of it, and of course the fanfare around the race. You have the boats in the harbor, the massive, and when I say boats, these are massive mega yachts worth millions of dollars, not a Sea-Doo or something. uh, you've got the pool, you've got the people up on the balconies. It's everybody who's anybody is in Monaco for this race every year, even if they've never been associated with Formula One. They're there. You'll see more garage paddock shots of celebrities during this race than any other race on the calendar. It's insane. The other thing about Monaco that makes it so interesting, and what F1 drivers really love about this track, even though they don't always like the race, they never want to lose Monaco. Jeremiah touched on this briefly. The cars used to be a lot smaller, and Monaco was like a legit F1 race because the cars were half the size that they are today when this first started back in the 50s. And so you could have a legit race around the hairpin. You could pass, you could overtake. It was wild. Today, we don't have that so much, but some really big champions dominated this track. Do you know who has the most wins at Monaco?
I want to say Ayrton Senna.
Ayrton Senna has 6 wins, 87, and then 89 all the way through 93.
Jeez.
He destroyed this track. Then you have Graham Hill and Michael Schumacher tied at 5 wins, Alain Prost at 4, and then you drop down to 3 where there's a couple guys including Lewis Hamilton, and then you drop down to 2 where there's a couple guys, the current drivers being Fernando Alonso and Max Verstappen. I don't see a world where Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen catch up to Ayrton Senna.
Oh,
I mean,
maybe Max if Red Bull continues dominance, but that Red Bull car's starting to get caught.
but here's the thing. It's in Monaco, it's not even about the dominance of the car, really. It's about having a perfect qualifying and then not getting caught up in any mess in the race. And the fact that Senna, I'm not going to say he was lucky. Senna was so good that for almost 6 years in a row, 1 year and then 5 years in a row, he qualied high enough to do that race and then avoided all the chaos, because he was racing in the 80s and 90s when the cars were a little bit bigger. They're not as big as they were today, but they're not 1950s small. I definitely don't see Lewis getting 3 more wins in his time in Formula One, and I don't see Max getting 4 more wins in his time in Formula One.
Do you remember that story of Ayrton Senna where he was saying that he entered this flow state where it was almost like he wasn't conscious while driving the car?
No.
So that was Monaco. Monaco, I can't remember. Gosh dang it. I can't remember which year it was, but whatever year it was, he was like 2 seconds or so, like a second and a half, something dramatic ahead of the car in front of him, ahead of his teammate Alan Prost at the time. And he said in qualifying, and he said that he entered this flow state where it was almost like he wasn't conscious while driving the car, but he just every corner was perfect, every single braking zone nailed, every single exit flawless. I mean, he was at one with the car. That happened here in Monaco.
I believe it. And I think you have to. I think you can't overthink it. I think when drivers start thinking about Monaco, they put it into a wall. They slide out. They bottom out on the hairpin. You can't think about it. And I think that might be a little bit of Charles Leclerc's troubles in recent years is the pressure just overwhelms the guy and he
Well,
can't get the job done.
he's got the curse of the hometown kid in Monaco. So,
I know.
and that curse is huge. We'll talk about that too. I want to bring that up.
The other thing about Monaco is it's part of the Triple Crown in motorsports. You know, you're familiar with like the horse racing Triple Crown and all that. The difference here is that this is probably the most difficult Triple Crown in sports because it's Monaco, the Indianapolis 500, and 24 Hours of Le Mans. And there's not too many current day drivers that drive in all of those events. In fact, I don't think there's any other than Fernando Alonso who's driven in all of those events.
Yep.
And so when you stack up those three events, their difficulty, the level of competition that they have in each of those events, it gets incredibly difficult. So much so that only one driver has won all three, and that's Graham Hill back in like the 60s.
Jeez.
The only two drivers that have done two of the events are Juan Pablo Montoya and Fernando Alonso. In one.
Yeah. And Alonso tried to get the Indy 500 on a couple occasions and just wasn't able to get it done.
So there is a race. There's a Grand Prix this weekend. It'll be great. They're going to award some points. But the main area to watch is going to be, of course, qualifying and then just the spectacle that is Monaco. Look at the people. They're going to have the craziest cars show up. They're going to show you like one of one Ferraris and Lamborghinis. And that's what this is for. And so, and maybe we'll get a good race. If we get a little bit of rain, if we get a little bit of chaos, I don't know, some pit stop chaos, who knows? Okay, before we go to predictions, any notes on your end about Monaco?
I just wanted to talk about Charles Leclerc's terrible mishaps in Monaco. I mean, between F2, DNF, first year Alfa Romeo, DNF, first, 3 years, I believe it is. Maybe it's only 2 years at Ferrari, DNF, DNF, DNF. Then he goes from pole to fourth. Then he goes from fourth to sixth. I mean, he has never had luck at this track. Oh, even whenever he was racing in the historic Monaco and he was in, what was it? Niki Lauda's car, I believe it was. Damaged, wrecked. It's just not good for Charles Leclerc at his hometown, and it's horrible because I mean exactly that. I don't know. I don't think if Monégasque has ever won the Monaco Grand Prix. I could be wrong on that, but Charles Leclerc is the hometown hero. He gets the most cheers. He gets everything. He gets flowers and everything during this whole race week, and year after year, something goes down.
I don't think anyone from Monaco has won. Oh, no. Well, okay. No, this is pre-Formula 1. So pre-Formula 1, there was Monégasque winners, but ever since Formula 1 became official, there hasn't been one.
Yeah, that's another thing about the Monaco Grand Prix is that it's so big. It was big before F1 even came to it. There was races in Monaco years before 1950 when F1 finally became a sanctioned race.
1929, all the way through the 30s. There was a brief pause for World War II because, that was a hot area at the time. And then they picked it back up a little bit after World War II. And then eventually they switched it over to F1 in the 50s. But yeah, Louis Chiron is the only Monégasque driver that won in 1931 in a Bugatti.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Charles, it's odd because Monaco is so tiny. I mean, how big is Monaco? I have no idea. It's got to be. I mean, like physically, it's tiny, but I don't know.
I saw a picture of the Monaco Grand Prix inside of the Imola Grand Prix. It's so small.
Their population is 39,000 people. So
Yeah.
to get an F1 caliber driver out of a pool of 39,000 people, even though that's like the hub of F1 in motorsports in Europe, a lot of the Monégasque, they're just, they're wealthy, they're business people, they're not race car drivers. So there's that angle to it. As we look at our predictions here, we'll make these in a second. Something happened last week where Charles Leclerc jumped up to second in the standings over Sergio Perez. So we're now dealing with that. The oddity, though, is that Charles hasn't finished second in a race all year or won a race.
No, but he's been pretty consistent on that podium spot, coming in third. So kudos to him for that.
Lando Norris is only 6 points behind Checo. He's in fourth at 101, Checo in third at 107. And of course, Lando has been on a heater the past 3 weeks. He got 21 points in China, 25 points in Miami, and then 18 points at Imola last week. And it really looks like he's going to fly up and catch Checo, fly up and catch Charles, and then he'll just be behind Verstappen for however long Verstappen wants to keep winning races.
Pretty much.
And then I think we touched on this last week. Dude, Mercedes at 7 and 8, and like Hamilton is only 2 points ahead of Fernando right now.
That's bad.
What is happening?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what it is basically Mercedes is giving up on these regulations and have started heavy all their heavy focus on the 2026 regulation change. So with that being, plus they're losing one of their drivers, their historic drivers. So it's kind of like, I don't know, a full give up, which is kind of sad to say. But I mean, Lewis is going to keep trying to get everything he can out of the car. George Russell is going to try and give everything he can out of the car. I just don't think the team is going to try and get everything out of that car anymore.
2 more notes for you. Ollie Behrman is still in 12th place, even though he hasn't raced in the last 5 Grand Prix.
Jeez.
And then pop quiz for you. Can you name the 5 drivers without any points?
Yeah, absolutely. Logan Sargent, Alex Albon, Valtteri Bottas, Zhou Guan Yu. Oh. Okay, hang on. No. I can do this.
I've got a hint for you if you need it.
No. None of that. Let's see, Williams, Stake, and Pierre Gasly hasn't scored points.
It is Pierre Gasly. The hint was going to be he tore up Monaco a few years ago with like 12 overtakes somehow. Okay, so let's do predictions. I think yours are odd this week, right?
I have a 1-2. I don't have a 3.
Okay.
Because I've got 2 wild cards. So I'll give you the wild cards first. Give me Daniel Ricciardo to come in a minimum of 8th place. And I mean ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, ahead of Nico Hülkenberg. Give me Fernando Alonso to come in the top 5.
Okay.
And give me Charles Leclerc to DNF.
Dude.
Now, for the 1 and 2 spot, give me Max Verstappen in the number 2 spot, and give me Lando Norris to win his first ever Monaco Grand Prix.
Wow. You think he's right there with Max now?
I think that on a track where there is no wide open passing areas, and with Red Bull's recent struggles in car setup, give me Lando Norris to figure it out and put the pieces together to win the Monaco Grand Prix.
Okay. I'll give you my top 3 in a wild card, a little more traditional. Give me Max to win. Give me Lando Norris to go second. And give me the hometown kid to go third.
DNF.
Charles has been right there. You mentioned earlier this whole year fighting for top 3s. I think he gets it done this year. Give him a top 3. For my wild card, we're going to go with the older gentleman of the F1 sport. We're going to go Hamilton, Checo, and Fernando Alonso, all to finish in the top 8.
That's pretty safe.
all to finish in the top 7.
Well, Alonso is still a wild card on that, and Hamilton is still a wild card on that. Checo, I can almost guarantee, will be in the top 8 unless something goes crazy in qualifying. So maybe it's not as safe as I say it is. 7's even more wild because now you're talking about who's going to get that 7th spot.
Well, that also means when you're putting 3 in the top 7, you're going to have a Ferrari and a McLaren mess up somewhere. I mean, realistically.
So recap on that. You've got you with Max, Lando, and Charles on your podium. And then you've got Sergio, Lewis, and Fernando all getting in the top 7. My predictions.
Let's go back to top 8.
There you go. Top 8. Give me Lando to win his first ever Monaco Grand Prix with Max finishing in 2nd. A DNF from the hometown kid Charles Leclerc. Daniel Ricciardo in the top 8 and Fernando Alonso in the top 5.
Wow. Okay, let us know in the comments your top 3 and a wild card.
Guys, if you think we've got this thing all wrong, Charles Leclerc wins his first Grand Prix, Max DNFs, Lando comes in 18th. It's just a hosh-posh of craziness. I think I'm right there with you.
Yeah, it's probably we're going to be so wrong. It's going to be Esteban Ocon claiming his victory in Monaco. Valtteri Bottas on 2nd.
Right.
All right, guys, we'll see you.
Bye, guys.